What's up guys, Jay here with Solo YGO. Welcome to the channel if you're new. Before we get into today's going second Swordsoul deck profile, go ahead and check out those channel memberships down below in the join button, as well as the Patreon, same exact benefits that help support the channel giveaways. Speaking of which, next month we'll be giving out a full box of Duelist Nexus, so stick around for that. And then lastly, before we get into deck profile, if you guys like Swordsoul, we do new deck profile every month. This is actually our second one this month, just because it's a going second variant instead. But if you want classic Swordsoul Tenyi with hand traps, we'll have another one again in September. Stick around for that. Alright, so without further ado, here's the list. We'll get into a lot of the theory behind the ratios later on, so stick around for that. But we're going to go ahead and max out on Ecclesia. Ecclesia is 3 in pretty much every build, but she's especially important in this build because if your opponent controls more monsters, then you can special summon her out. So that's important for going second. She got that Cyber Dragon effect. 3 Moe, 3 Long One, 2 Taya, 3 Emergence, and 1 Blackout. Just literally the standard Swordsoul ratios. But we're not maxing out on Taya, even though Taya is good for Baxia going second. But still, I think 2 is just fine, especially with 3 Emergence. Chi-Chao being able to search stuff, Ecclesia being able to go into Taya if you need to. It's just fine how it is. No need to reinvent the wheel as far as the standard Swordsoul ratios go. Next up we have the Tenyis, which are some of the best going second cards in the deck. Just because of this guy, Vishuda. We're now playing 3 of him rather than 2 in our standard build. Vishuda is able to bounce cards back to the hand. So it's very important. We're now playing 3 Adhara instead because Vessel plus any one of the Tenyis, which go into Monk, equals Vishuda in the grave, or a Swordsoul token can get Vishuda in the grave. So that's just very important. Plus we're playing Pot of Desires, so having triples of all these is very nice with Desires not banishing, you know, what we need to do. And then on to the rest of the deck. Now the rest of the deck is literally no hand traps. It's just blowout cards. So here's the full lineup. The boss spell of the going second cards. We got 2 Triple Tactics Thrust, 3 Evenly Matched, 2 Dark Ruler No More, 2 Lightning Storm, 1 Raigeki, 1 Triple Tactics Talents, 2 Pot of Desires. So the theory behind these ratios is that Evenly Matched is the only one we're playing 3 of because it's not once per turn. I know Dark Ruler No More is not once per turn either, but this is actual removal, so that's a little more important for what we're trying to do. 2 Thrust is just fine because he's basically just a pseudonym of everything else, and I don't want to see multiple of him because he's once per turn. So 2 is just fine. Lightning Storm, of course, is semi-limited, but regardless, we would only be playing 2 anyways now because of Thrust. 1 Raigeki, 1 Triple Tactics Talent, those are just Thrust names and targets, and then if we hard draw them, you know, they're there as well. Desires, very important for this strategy. As you can see, we were maxing out on all the Tenyis, and the Swordsouls, aside from Taya, were maxed out. Blackout, hopefully you just search them before you have to Desires. But nevertheless, Pot of Desires really helps with consistency in this deck, especially going second when you know you're going to give your opponent everything they want because you have no hand trap interruptions. It allows you to dig and make sure you can play. And keep in mind, we're no longer just playing with 5 cards going second. We always have 6, so we're going to have more consistency just because of that. I'll get you guys some combo videos sometimes with the video, or maybe we'll do some gameplay on the channel, but you can see how consistent it is. These ratios seem to work the best for me. If you guys have any suggestions, though, leave them down in the comments below, and we can explore those ratios. So that's it for the blowout cards, and that's the 40 card list. We'll get into the extra deck, and then we will quickly talk about why Swordsoul, before we end the video, is one of the best going second decks in the game, and what it gets going second that it just doesn't get going first. Alright, here we go. So this is the pretty much same lineup as my standard Swordsoul Tenyi list. We got 2 Monk, 1 Yazi, 2 Chi-Chao, 2 Baxia, Dragite, Draco Berserker, Ice Jade, Supreme, Baron, Chaos Angel, Sinister, Q-Ching Long One, and Psychic and Punisher. Pretty standard. You could play 3 Monk now just because we're maxed out on so many Tenyis. But yeah, in general, hopefully you don't have to. You're probably going to OTK with this build unless you're Dark Rulering, then probably be the next turn. Monk plus Chi-Chow plus Baron plus Long One Burn is exactly 8k, and you should be able to get that off most games, at least in the second turn, because like I said, Dark Ruler no more, you can't do damage, and then evenly matched, you might have to skip your battle phase, but hopefully you can just clear the board because there's so much removal going second for Sword Soul that just doesn't get going first. So now we'll talk about that. The things that Sword Soul going second does not get going first, because let's be honest, Baron, Chi-Chow, Blackout is kind of underwhelming. Hopefully you draw some hand traps. That's typically the standard end board for Swordsoul Tenyi. You get the Shoot a Bounce. That's something you cannot possibly get going first. You get the Ecclesia Special Summon, unless you're able to give a monster somehow that cannot special summon out. So you get the Baxia Spin. You get the Baron pop on your opponent's cards. You get potentially the Yazi pop. I mean, that's just 5 things right there that you can't get going first with this deck. And the fact that the deck is so consistent with how many starters and extenders it has. Like, let's be real, even if you don't draw any board breakers, Swordsoul Tenyi always has a chance going second just because of how much interaction it has, how many things it can play through. But yeah, hopefully with how many board breakers we have, and consistency cards, you will, in general, draw a board breaker to accompany your cards. So that's why Swordsoul going second is one of my favorite builds if you're not playing pure Swordsoul Tenyi. I do believe the hand trap variant is probably something that's a little safer for bigger tournaments, but this is something you can have fun with. Just understand it has its downsides. Your opponent can make you go first, or they just don't play into certain stuff, or you just completely brick and then you gave them a full board and you don't have any board breakers and you couldn't play through them somehow. You know, there's always the downside, especially Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Letting somebody go first, but that's the price we pay to have, you know, a deck that has so much upside going second. Going first, of course, you want to have a bunch of going first cards in your side deck. So that's going to be Anti-Spell, D-Barrier, Gravity Collapse if you want to play something delinquent like that. Maybe some other generic stuff. But yeah, that's our going second variant of Swordsoul Tenyi. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any comments or suggestions, leave them down below. Peace out.